Hi everyone. Thanks for being in this EasyLogin session. So just to introduce me, if you don't know me yet, my name is Yoann Gini. I'm French. I'm a system network administrator in France, working mainly on SMB-related subject and security-related subject, with few things like hacking and reverse engineering and things like that. And I'm also kind of hobbyist software developer. I've made few tools like Hello IT or IRD Inspector that some of you may already use, and few firmware ones that does not have any future now that macOS server is done, but that's the point. So we're here to talk about a project that I've announced a year ago, exactly here, EasyLogin. EasyLogin is an idea we got about the way we are using the directory services right now. So actually, you may or may not use the directory service who rely on LDAP, the Lightware Directory Access Protocol, who was made quite a long time ago for network services to access to a directory database, a source of trust for all kind of credentials. At this time, we are using this kind of protocol, network-made protocol made for the network services, to manage the identities in our devices. But our devices are mobile and not always connected to a network. That leads us to a scenario where when you are bound to a directory service of any kind, you have to do a first authentication on the network to be able to actually use this credential as a catch credential one. And well, all those kind of scenario is quite, let's say, inappropriate for those days. Like, everyone is mobile. Why should I be able to manage my identity only when I'm on site? That does not make sense anymore. So, a year ago, we started to work on the idea of what if we could do a brandly new kind of directory service that support correctly user provisioning by design. The main idea for us would be to say, well, I want my directory service to be able to push the identity to my devices and let my devices as an agreement with my directory service that if there is any change on the other side, everyone will stay updated. So that's the main idea behind EasyLogin. Other new generation directory service provider has the same idea, basically. There is few competitors. What pushed us to start this initiative was basically the way it has been integrated on macOS. At this time, if we are looking at all production-ready solutions on the market, none of them has managed the macOS integration correctly, basically. They broke firewalls, they have some issue managing multiple users on the same devices, etc. So it's not that good. So we found a way on macOS of doing things correctly based on the Open Directory module API. I gave a full day workshop yesterday just about that, like how we actually created the code behind EasyLogin. So we created this project with the idea of doing things correctly without breaking macOS at all, just using correct API to do correct things. And the thing was, in 3 weeks, basically, we have a fully working solution with no issue with firewalls and everything. So that was quite interesting for us to see which kind of quality level we can achieve in so few time just by using the official API. Not documented, but yes, still official. So one of the things we wanted to do with this project is, since it's a directory service and it's something that you have to trust, for us there is absolutely no other option that this to be 100% open source and free. Basically, the whole source code of this project is completely available. There is nothing was being kept private. Until today, the source code of the Mac integration side was not published because we didn't want it to give advantage to the closed version, to the competitors. But starting right now, all the source code is published. So if you go on the EasyLogin project GitHub page, you will find all source code for the server side, for the admin UI, for the macOS agent, and the macOS Open Directory plugin. So everything is completely open source and will always stay open source. It's always important when you are relying on an open source project to understand how these things will evolve and actually how people get paid to write the code you are using. So we intend to do this as paid professional services. So if you want to do it on site and you need help, we can get money from this. And we will also provide managed hosting with instance in Europe, in America, and maybe in Australia or something like that. Basically, correctly managing the fact that not all countries most countries want information on their own network. Like I'm French, and most of my customers will never be able to use Google Suite, for example, for business because, well, it's hosted in America and there is no guarantee for us. So we designed this product clearly to match our expectation of security and confidentiality and everything. So that means basically it's made to be multi-instance ones, like one customer, each customer has its own instance, and it's really easy to deploy. It relies on things like Cloud Foundry with Docker and everything. So basically, you should not have any need of help for any kind of normal size deployment. In terms of roadmap, we done a lot. We still have a lot to go, but we are already ready for public beta, let's say. So we started by doing the macOS integration one. So it's working on macOS and with 5 volt. Absolutely nothing changed between normal 5 volt and 5 volt with EasyLogin. We created a LDAP gateway, and we designed it for AirWatch in terms of MDM. So clearly it could work with any kind of MDM, but at this time, AirWatch is the only one who offers all the features that we need to correctly work. One of them is, well, the two mandatory of them is Bootstrap package. We want EasyLogin to be installed during the await configuration screen of the DEP steps. And actually, that's only one of the few MDM who are offering it. And the other one is the network user extension thing, to be able to manage profile for the user and not for the device. And if you match those two one, well, AirWatch is the way to go. So at this time, the LDAP gateway has been created and tested against the AirWatch implementation. But if one other MDM at one point of the time extend their capabilities to correctly support network user extension and Bootstrap package, we will be able to support it. The point about Bootstrap package here, if we are comparing to other MDM who does have the network user extension but does not have the Bootstrap one, the Bootstrap one will be mandatory because we are providing the directory service. So if we can't install the directory service before the login window show up, you will never be able to do anything. So that's why Bootstrap package is mandatory. We then worked on a Docker support. So basically, we have a fully working solution based with Docker, actually made more for beta than for production. For production, we are looking for something more robust, let's say, or not based on image, purely. We have support for users and groups. We are currently working on a SAML identity provider and a SCIM integration, to fully act as a directory service for all kind of identity-based things. And that once that is done, that will be our first version 1, and we will stop working on new feature just to stabilize everything for this. So the roadmap has a little bit changed since we are now going for beta. If you want to test it, you can. Source code is published. So we will then, starting from now, work on finalizing this identity provider part and stabilizing everything. Main idea would be to have, by the end of the year, everything's done. So, if you want to test EasyLogin, you may want to understand how is it built and which part is responsible of what. It's made to be cloud-based and publicly exposed on the internet. So since we are requesting something mobile, we need to be able to be reachable from anywhere. And there is clearly no sense of having your SAML identity provider exposed on the internet, but not your directory service. They are mainly the same, and they are mainly providing the same information. So at this time, everyone is closing the LDAP behind firewall and everything, mainly because of a lack of knowledge and a lack of experience here in terms of LDAP security way to do it. So a secure way to publish LDAP. So anyway, at this time, everyone is closing the directory service behind a wall, leading us to a scenario where when we are outside the company, we can change our password. This kind of thing does not make sense in my own opinion. So we designed EasyLogin architecture to be able to be exposed on the internet if you want, and to be robust. So that means we have basically 3 areas of information. And the first part is on the server side, we are relying on the CouchDB database. So when we will go on a multi-tier scenario with multi-data center for a customer or whatever, everything will be handled by CouchDB in terms of replication of data. We have one server who is exposed on the internet and will offer only REST API, and that server will ask CouchDB over HTTPS. So the link between the REST API server and the CouchDB can be private only. This REST API server will be asked by the managed devices across an HTTPS channel. So something that all security experts are used to manage, and no one will shoot against you if you are asking to open an HTTPS channel over the internet. And we will basically use a WebSocket inside, a secure WebSocket, to manage push services. So basically, when a new user user change will be done, this WebSocket will be used by the server side to notify all needed endpoints to start the update. We also have WebAdmins with a side that will be that is currently based on React.js. So that means there is no server side of this. There is no server intelligence on this WebAdmin page. It's a full JavaScript web application with loaded to your web browser, and the web browser do the call directly to the REST API. So that means if you want to protect the WebAdmin to be accessible only on some network, you can just restrict this part, and your admin operator will basically just access it and then reach the REST API with this web interface. And we also created a LDAP gateway. So we actually write a LDAP server because, well, we have some software that are not ready for modern kind of directory services that cannot rely on SCIM and SAML. MDM are one of them, not because they can't, but not because they won't, but because it can't, mainly due to Apple and the DEP part. As long as DEP will not support SAML, we will still have to support LDAP for MDM server, basically. So for legacy kind of application, we will have this LDAP gateway ready. So basically, we have all those components. Some may stay on a private network, some are made to be exposed on the internet. And in terms of stream direction, you have here all the colors are associated to the connection on the client side. So for example, the blue HTTPS one means it's coming from the admin operator to the web admin server. The orange one means it's the managed devices who is in charge to maintain the connection, the outgoing connection to the REST API. So if you are looking at network diagram here, it's always outgoing connection. Except for the server side where, well, it's a server, so it's exposed on the internet, but everything is HTTPS based and outgoing connection. So you shouldn't have a lot of issue with any kind of firewall when you are deploying it, even if it's on a Wi-Fi of a hotel or for an airport or whatever, it should just work. And one other thing is, absolutely everything is stateless. There is no state at any point of each connection node. So everything can be distributed across multiple instances. So basically, the web admin can already be installed on multiple web instances if needed. It's just static file on the web admin, so it's really simple. The API server at this time, it's mono instance, but will soon be able to be multiple, to be load balanced. And we will basically use CouchDB as a notification services between all instances. And the LDAP server, well, by design, LDAP is not really multi-instance, but you can set up as much LDAP gateway as you want. There is no issue on this. And the same, the LDAP gateway is stateless, so you can create multiple LDAP gateway instance and put a load balancer in front of it. You won't have any issue with that. So this is for the server side and the global picture, let's say. Aside of that, we have the macOS part. And this is where we got the most interesting part, basically. The server side could be done by anyone. The macOS integration one, well, for what we've seen, we are quite a few to have the knowledge to do it. So when you are on macOS and you are connecting, you are accessing to the device, basically your user accessing to the device will have to somehow enter some kind of credential. So the login window will, for example, ask the user for a username and a password. When this username and password is asked by the login window will forward this credential to a service called Open Directory D. Is there anyone in the room who already followed the macOS directory service courses, the 301 courses back in time? No. So this was something Apple was used to teach to every MacAdmins up to 10.6, and since it has been forgotten from the courses, but it's still here. And basically, what macOS is doing, so for all kind of application who are asking for a login and password, those credentials are sent to Open Directory D. Open Directory D is a service running on all devices. This service has nothing to do with Open Directory server. Open Directory is just a branding name at Apple for everything related to directory service, client side or server side. So Open Directory D is a service on the macOS, on all your macOS, that is used to handle all kind of credential or identity-related operation. And Open Directory is one of the few things like you can say, well, it has been correctly created. It's really well done. And basically, Open Directory itself just does nothing. It's a plugin-based architecture. One of the plugins is, for example, the DaaS local. So Open Directory D forward to a plugin all requests, for example, to access to the var.db DaaS local database, the playlist bucket database that you use for all your local accounts. It's Open Directory D who talk to the DaaS local plugin, who then manage the playlist bucket database. And you have other plugins. You have the Active Directory one that don't use a local file, but that will rely on the network services via LDAP. It will ask the Active Directory for information requested, validating the user record, accessing some other user info to serve as a yellow page, for example. You also have the standard LDAP one, so if you are connecting to an open LDAP, you have native support for this. And there is a way to extend this. It has been made originally to be extensible to anyone. One of the most known third-party plugin provider is Sanctify. If you want to use Active Directory with more features that the original ID plugin has, you can use Sanctify to integrate to your Active Directory. Well, this relies on a directory service plugin. So the main idea was to rely on this extensive API on Open Directory D to manage third-party plugin and to create one for EasyLogin. And clearly, it was a really easy but complex thing to do. The implementation is quite easy, but there is no documentation about it. So the complex part was to actually figure out how this thing is working. But once it's done, well, it's not that hard to use, not at all, even. So if we are looking at how is it working on the macOS side, this EasyLogin integration, we can split the scheme in two parts. What is acting locally and what is considered as remote with the whole bubble of EasyLogin server. Like, not really looking at what the EasyLogin server is, but let's say that this is local and this is remote. So, when something is asked to Open Directory D, it's forwarded to EasyLogin, and the EasyLogin Open Directory plugin work only by simply reading a playlist database, which is located in /library/EasyLogin/DB. It's a read-only access to a playlist database that contains all the user records who has been pushed to the device, who has been provisioned for this device. This database is maintained by a dedicated agent that will just write information to this database. And those information will be gotten from the server directly. So the agent is in charge of maintaining the WebSocket and applying all change to the local database. And it will also be in charge of forwarding the password change requests to the server. So if we are looking at some common scenario here, like for example, creating a new user profile, like we are creating a new user on the EasyLogin server. The server will use all the WebSocket, the active WebSocket, to inform all endpoints that there is a new profile to sync, and basically the agent will be in charge of downloading this profile. And once the profile has been downloaded, it will be written directly to the EasyLogin local database. Once it's done, when a login occurs, well, it's simple as the Open Directory ID gets the credential, forward it to EasyLogin. EasyLogin read the plist-based database that we maintain, check if the credential is good or not, and forward the result back to the login window. And if, for example, at any moment the user wants to change the password, it will simply do it with the system preferences. System preferences, user and group, change password, using the standard default UI for this. And the password change request will be sent to Open Directory ID, and so EasyLogin, and so the agent, the server. If the server accepts the operation, this will start again a push notification, update your records, here is the new user, the new updated record for these users, and then everything is synced. Any question on this? Okay, so if you want to test it with Docker, so I insist on the thing that is for testing purpose only. It's not ready for production, and it will certainly not be in production with Docker. We don't want to rely on image for production scenario, but we will provide deployment script in another way. So basically, you have on the EasyLogin project GitHub, you have a project called EasyLogin on Docker. Check it out. Switch to the developer branch. You will need to create a X509 certificate to protect the HTTPS channel that has to be named https.key and .cert. So clearly, since it's not for production purpose, we didn't really care about the way we manage the HTTPS in the Docker image. So that's why we say it's for testing purpose. We don't want you to use it for production. The HTTPS part will be onboarded directly to one of the images that will be created right at this time by Docker Compose. So you have to specify a tag developer who will say, well, to Docker Compose, well, use all developer image published by EasyLogin organization for this scenario. Basically, when you are running the Docker Compose up, you are creating one Docker image with EasyLogin on Docker front. That one will be created on your device. All others, the CouchDB image, the EasyLogin WebAdmin, the EasyLogin server, and the EasyLogin LDAP are grabbed from our Docker repository. In terms of architecture, when you are creating this setup, you are spawning few image, few containers. So inside Docker, you have the admin container who access the API one, who access the CouchDB one. We also have the LDAP container who is correctly exposed on your network, who access the API inside the Docker area, and who publish the LDAP services on port TCP 6389. And we also have, of course, the front server. So this part is specific to the Docker way of deployment. It's in charge of doing HTTP routing, basically. So it exposed information on 6443 encrypted with HTTPS, and forward /API, for example, to the API instance, and /admin to the admin instance, basically. And so you can directly connect all your endpoints, manage devices, admin operator, and former services who are relying on LDAP directly to your new services. So if you want to test EasyLogin and give us some feedback about the way it works and etc., that will be your setup scenario. If you want to test EasyLogin, you will also want to test the MDM integration. And to integrate to MDM, you will have to use our LDAP gateway. And I insist on the fact that this is a LDAP gateway, so what has been, for what LDAP has been created first. It's not intended to be a server, it's not a server, it's a database language, LDAP. So here the LDAP is a gateway from one standard language, the LDAP one, to our system of API. So that's why it's called LDAP gateway and not LDAP server. So if you want to use this LDAP gateway, we have a specific scheme at this time, custom made, but mainly based on what you are used to. This scheme is subject to change in the future. Like, let's say the first stable version of the scheme, we may or may not change things in the future, especially in the way we are managing groups. We will see. Based on feedback on everyone, we will see how it changed before the first official release, and as soon as it will be fixed for the first official release, we will try to not change it again. So we have the base DN is DC equal EasyLogin, DC equal proxy. We didn't want it to include your domain name in the base DN. For one of the reason was we didn't wanted a lot of configuration part on the gateway itself. We want it to be as simple as possible and just forward the information. So maybe it will change, maybe not. So basically, you have a user's container with all kind of all your user accessible. You have one of the most important things to know when you are playing with directory service and MDM. This is the object ID. So entry UUID is the object ID, and it's a string-based one, not a binary one. So it will have an importance when you will link your directory service to MDM. And we have all sort of usual records. The entry UUID, to talk about this again, it will match the generated UID on the macOS side. So that's what will be used for the MDM server to correctly recognize your EasyLogin user during a network authentication. For the network extension module on the MDM, it will rely on this entry UUID. For the groups, CN groups, you have based information on the group, and we have multiple way of managing access to the subgroups and sub-member and etc. So I want to explain a little bit on this because, well, on my experience, most people use LDAP and most people don't know how to use LDAP. So the thing is, there is a lot of really bad implementation that you may have to use, like for example a service connected to LDAP server but not correctly managing groups, and you end up with some issue like, well, it's my group who are knowing the users, not my user who know their groups, and I'm not really sure about how accessing the whole group transversal information and etc. So based on my experience on the LDAP server and mainly on the LDAP implementation on the client side, on the consumer side, we created a special way of using, of accessing the members of a groups. So I want to explain it to you. We basically created a special field for every and each way of accessing the group's member. So like that, you should be able to natively support any kind of group-based, group-supported LDAP consumer services. So here is the example. We have Team A with few subgroups, Team A manager and Team A member. Team A member are also subgroups, Team A full-time and Team A part-time. Each of them have one user associated, and there is also one direct member to the Team A. So that's the kind of complex scenario you can have on a real directory with groups, subgroups, sub-subgroups, member at each levels, and at one point of the time you want your services to access it correctly. So we have for most of the API, you have by DN or by short name based on what you want to use and what your LDAP consumer is supporting. And so we have the nested group field who access only to the first, to the directly nested groups. So if you are looking on Team A, we will access to Team A manager and member. We have the user member by DN or by short name, and we will access to the first level only. And so that will be Dave here. We have the mixed member by DN. So we get access to groups and users as a direct member. There is no sense of doing the direct member by short name, I think, so we did it. If at one point of the time you need it, it will be really easy to implement for us. Just we didn't feel that it was coherent to provide a mixed list of records of user and groups by the short name only. So we only provided by DN1. We also have the flattened nested group by short name. So we get all the nested group, but all the tree of groups by short name, and the same for flattened member by short name. So basically, if your LDAP consumer services correctly support groups, subgroups, and is able to unfold the directory tree by itself, you can use the normal member and nested group field. And if you are on one of the many LDAP services, LDAP consumer services who does not support correctly groups and subgroups and nested groups and everything, you have this flattened thing that has been provided here to fix poorly implemented LDAP consumer service. If we continue on the test thing, basically, you will have to set up your macOS client. So it supports profile, of course. Sorry. So of course it supports profile-based configuration. So you will use this MCX preference style profile to provide a base URL to the io.easylogin.settings domain. And that's all, basically, at this time. At this time, there is no client authentication from the client to the server, so it's for testing purpose only again. We will work on the authentication part. We have few idea of way of doing this, and we need to test some of them to be sure that we can correctly deploy all the payload with MDM and still be secure and and avoid providing false security. Like if everyone is sharing the same credentials, it's the same as no credential at all. So we will figure out something to make it MDM ready and secure and easy to use. So at this time it's nothing, and it will come. To support 5 volts on macOS correctly, you have one simple thing to do, is to enable the mobile account. As soon as you are correctly using an Open Directory plugins to provide your users, your directory users will be 5 volt enabled as soon as you enable the mobile account. So if you provide the payload needed to the mobile account, your macOS will create a cache record from your EasyLogin directory to your local directory, and doing so will forward all information, all credential information directly to Fiverr, and will be in charge of keeping this updated. Clearly, using the mobile part of here has no sense at all, since our EasyLogin database is already local, so it will work offline without this mobile account payload, but it's here only for one thing, enabling Fiverr. And that's the point of this whole setup. So, is there any question on the theory part? Okay, so I will try to do a demo and see if everything's work or not work. We'll see. So, this is a standard macOS VM, nothing installed yet. Every step I will do right now could be done with the MDM, with the Bootstrap package, the DEP enrollment and everything. I just didn't want it to play, to put a bet on the network access here. So everything will be locally done, but it clearly can be done via the MDM. So the first thing I will do is to install the profiles that will set the base URL for EasyLogin. So it will simply install this and create information about where to find my EasyLogin server instance. Then I will install directly my EasyLogin package that will install the Open Directory plugin, the database, and the agent. If we are looking at the logs, if everything goes well, we should have a library logs, varlog EasyLogin agent log, where we can see that, yeah, it's already syncing some users. So it has correctly been able to access internet, and it is actually syncing the whole directory. At this time, we still didn't have implemented the sync list of users for each devices, so we are just syncing everyone right now. And in a short future, we will be able to say, well, for this device or this group of device, sync only these users. Or maybe just some user provided to you by the MDM. Like, for example, if the MDM say it's for this user, sync it. So we will be able to do this kind of smart things. At this time, it don't cost much, so we just sync everything. Yeah.
What about just having a look at, well, if MDM pushes us as users, but let's say we're not using MDM, the current users on the machine, and having just check the current users.
Yeah, but the thing is, we need to be able to provide the user before the user actually uses the device. That was the goal. So basically, with this setup, as an IT, you set up the device like we did. You close it, you give it to the user. If the user do the first ever login on a plane without a network, it will work. That was the whole point. As an IT, we are able to prepare the whole device, including the user identity, without having the need to use the user identity, and still be able to do the first ever usage offline completely. We are provisioning the information here, like we are used to do now with MDM. Like, we don't care if the user is here or not. We are able to purge the settings. We don't have to open the session to actually provide the settings. That's basically the same. Does this answer your question? Yeah. Sorry. So, Right now, my sync is done, so I have all my user locally. One of the things I can do is simply look at the directory utility things, see that my EasyLogin plugin has been correctly added to the authentication path, and not yet to my contact one, but I will show you this later. The directory editor gives me access to the EasyLogin path, and I correctly see all my users here with all information about my user as expected. So right now, I can simply log out. It's a network. The login window sees that there is more than the local database. This means it will automatically show up the other option, and I can use one of the directory provided user record to open a new session and access to my directory to my login environment, basically. So it's the first one is always slow because it's creating the user environment and everything. Yeah. Okay, so we are just connected as raw directory user. Now, if I want to go a bit further, I've told you that this is correctly supporting MDM management. So I will try to enroll this device to MDM instance. Hopefully the network will work correctly. Okay. Am I still connected? No. So this is my MDM. I now see that there is my device correctly enrolled, and it has been enrolled as, let's say, DP step or automated enrollment step. So it's shown as associated with my staging user. So basically, no non-user has actually used the device, so it's associated to the staging user one. If I'm looking at my directory settings of my MDM, it has been associated with my LDAP gateway with all information needed for. A special user has been created on the directory service to allow the access by the MDM. There is no anonymous access allowed on the LDAP gateway. The object identifier data type has been set to string. Since it's a string, it's not a binary one. And if we are looking at the user settings, we have correctly set the base DN, the object class for the user, and all the attributes we are using. So one of the most important is the object identifier being set to entry UUID and all others. And the same for the groups, where we set groups here to be with entry UUID, CN, and etc. And well, AirWatch is one of the few correctly made LDAP consumer where you can actually set, well, what kind of group management do I have on my LDAP? So you can set, is it a member of or is it a member? So is it the user who knows the group or is it the group who knows the user? And if it's the group who knows the user, what kind of list of members do I have? So it's a group who knows the member. I would provide distinguished name. And so the member field will be the mixed member by DN. This means AirWatch, by this field, we get access to subgroups and direct member as a group and direct member as a user. And AirWatch will be just in charge of unfolding all the subgroups to get access to all users, basically. So that's the directory setting we set. I've already synced few users and few groups. So it's a European one, for example. I can simply add a new group and search for it. So actually, the AirWatch server is talking to the LDAP gateway. The LDAP gateway is converting the LDAP request to a REST API request, who then end up to the CouchDB and all the way back to my AirWatch server. And I correctly see that, yeah, it found me the America group, and I can use few advanced settings here to say, well, add all the group member automatically to AirWatch, or I can just leave this disabled, and it will add it on demand to AirWatch, depending if you want to have your user pre-filled in AirWatch or not. It will depend on the way you are using the MDM. So, if we are looking at this, I'm currently adding my America group to my AirWatch setup. This will allow me to target some settings at the user level and not just at the device level. So I have America and Europe groups. If I'm looking at my profile, actually I have doc on the right assigned to Europe. I will simply do macOS profile at the user level called doc on the left associated to the America group, user group, not group of device. On the doc, I will say, well, it will be set on the left, save and publish. At this time, there is no device associated because there is no user connected with part of these groups. If we are looking to the list of groups right now, we see that Europe has 9 known users and America and 0 known users. So let's just connect first with one of the users who is known and who is part of the European group. So we will use one of the European users, and right now we know that the device is in staging mode from the AirWatch point of view. It's associated to the staging user. It's enrolled, but the user is not known. So if I'm connecting to a directory user, at this time, you see that the MDM has started to work. Basically, the login window has reported the currently connected users to the MDM. That means the MDM has now been able to update all the managed settings for us. And effectively, we see that the device is now associated to my user directly. This is done thanks to the entry UUID, the object ID, correctly synced between what the macOS is seeing and what the MDM is seeing. So effectively, I'm right now on a European user, so I have access to my session and my doc is set on the right. If I look at my profile, I have my user profile correctly made, so it's worked as expected. Let's just log out and use some American users. So this is the current admin interface of EasyLogin. So we have users, groups, and so let's say use this one. I will just reset the password. So I'm currently right now resetting the password of the users with on the server who is actually located in IBM data center in Europe. I'm on my login window here, and we will see how fast it can propagate. Yeah, it seems to work. So quite effective in terms of new user information synchronization across the network. We are connecting with a new user here. And if everything works as expected, we should have the doc on the left. No, that's sad. Well, actually, the MDM got correctly the new user, and so the login window has got a new user who has been connected. The user has been reported to the MDM as this UUID who has been currently connecting. The MDM was not aware of this user because it was not synced at this time. And so he has looked for this UUID inside the LDAP server to retrieve the information. And for some reason that I don't remember right now, the group part has not been updated. But if I just ask the American group to sync, it should just sync automatically and get my member correctly. I may have forgot something in the demo stream. So whatever. The thing is, yeah, I correctly have my one user associated, and soon my doc will be on the other side. So whatever. The point was, the user is now able to be managed correctly at the login window time, with my custom-made directory service correctly being integrated to the MDM server, and all my users being able to use all devices correctly with user provisioning working as expected for modern kind of usage, with all kind of protocol correctly made to be internet usable. There is basically no difference between what we are doing right now with this directory service and what we are doing with MDM. It's basically the same. And yeah, that's all, basically. Integration is working as expected, and etc. So, if we go back again on a slide, you may have noticed that I'm using 10.12. There is one major issue with 10.13. Like, well, there is a lot of them, but there is one who concerns us. When 10.13 has been published, the Open Directory D has got some major change to support the secure token part. Some of this change were the root cause of the IAM root security failure. If you remember it was based on the change they made for the secure token. So there is few still parts who are not work as expected on Open Directory D since 10.13.0 and yet on 10.14. However, there is a bug report who has been opened, who is actually currently at the P1 level. So the only remaining one is P0. So we are not that bad in terms of importance of the bug. For what I understood, what we are doing, the API we are using is still officially there. It's just that there is a bug and it will be fixed, but we don't know yet when it will be fixed. So I highly encourage you, if you like to use this tool for the production scenario in the future, to report this bug report ID to your Apple's contact of any kind to maybe make it fixed faster than what is currently planned. Anyway, at this time, as again, it's for testing purpose only. We are only here to share with you how it works and what you could expect from it. Like, we have a lot of experience in terms of device management and identity management and everything, but we are now interested to see what you will think if we give you the tools and see what kind of feedback you can procure so we can make this even better. And at one point of the time, actually ready for production and for a new kind of directory-based management. If you have any questions, feel free. We have 15 minutes to go. And there is the GitHub page, EasyLogin project, and also the web page, easylogin.pro, where you can subscribe for the newsletter and be able to be notified when everything new will happen. So feel free to look at it, hack on it, try it, and etc. Questions on? Yeah, just. Who's this? Oh.
In the future, I said when you get to like the Windows part.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm not sure if it would affect the Mac, but like profiles. Would it be able to handle the file transfers of profile, or it's just logins? Like because roaming profiles on the Windows side.
Yeah. So on the Windows side, it will be basically the same, and we will manage it the way that users' data stay on the device. We won't manage a synced version like on the device and on the server or just on the server. We are designing it for mobility first and completely get rid of all other scenarios. So it will be profile on the device, and we just support that part. Does it answer the question?
Yeah. The final question would be, let's say we have users who come back on campus, whatever, but they still want to sync up their profiles. So I guess we still have to use
something else like a Dropbox or whatever. Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
So you had mentioned earlier you had upcoming feature of SAML Identity Provider. Can you talk a little bit about what the vision of that is? From the way I'm understanding it, I'm imagining that you would log in with either like a one login, Okta, or G Suite account to auth into your machine. Is that how it's supposed to operate?
No. The thing is, since we are providing a directory service, there is it makes no sense to sync it to another directory service provider to provide the SAML part to authenticate G Suite or everything. So the goal for us is to actually provide a real identity provider built into the server part of EasyLogin, and so you will be able to authenticate Dropbox, G Suite, O365 directly to EasyLogin.
Okay, so EasyLogin's the identity provider in this case. Okay, understood.
For the part of the question you have, like using SAML to authenticate on the Mac, we think about it and we won't support it because it must be connected to the internet to get access to it. Right. And that's quite of a mess. So basically there is few ideas on this. I know that some other projects are working on custom login window and everything. That might be something will come out at one point at a time on this, but I'm not sure about the scenario because it will require an internet access. And everyone actually is now working to be sure that we are managing a device out of the internet.
Understood. Yeah. Thank you.
No question? Okay. Well, that's all. Thanks a lot for attending this session. Don't forget the feedback survey. Again, EasyLogin project on GitHub or EasyLogin.pro for the website. And I hope to have some of your feedback about the project. If I will be really pleased to have all kind of inputs on it, and all kind of thing you want to do with it. So basically, I will create also a Slack channel on it. So yeah, feel free to send any kind of feedback. Thanks.